Hello and welcome to Ruck N Roll. You're joining me, Sanath Martis, on podhub.lk on the Facebook channel and the YouTube channel. Thanks very much. We're going to be talking about schools rugby. We've seen probably the most exciting game of the weekend so far. Do we have another one in store for you? Stay on the show and find out. First up, of course, a look back at what happened last weekend and one really exciting game that we'll talk in more detail about, but of course some really exciting results in the rest of the games as well. Let's look back at the week that was with Seattle. The road is yours.
Car Radials, the road is yours.
As you know, here on Ruck N Roll, we don't just give you the results, we analyze the results. We look forward to what's going to happen and tell you why what happened may actually have happened. We have Abdellah in the studio looking forward to what's going to happen next week. He's really excited about that game. But before we go to next week, let's look back at what happened over last week's action. We had plenty of really defining key games, and let's look at all of those. We had Dharmaraja taking on Science College up in Kandy. Now, Science College were traveling. Science College had been in the midst of a lot of controversy, and they knew that they needed to get their season back on track. They had a big win against Sumanthala last weekend, but unfortunately against another upcountry school, they didn't do too well. It was Dharmaraja who managed to come through in this one, high-pressure environment, and you would have thought, Abdellah, that Science would have managed to pull this one off, but it looks like off-field events are putting them under a little bit of pressure.
Yes, most definitely. As well as I think the fact that they had to travel up to Kandy also would have played a part. With Dharmaraja playing at home, obviously they will have an advantage. From Science point of view, it was pretty unfortunate, this result, because probably until this game, they had an outside chance, but yet they had a chance of making it to the super round. But with this defeat, unfortunately, all their chances are pretty much over.
So, as you know, only two teams make it through to the Super Round, and at the moment, in this particular segment, we have St. Thomas as one of the schools that are competing for that second round. And they managed to get right up in the points for column with a big win, 57 points to 18 against Sri Sumanthala. Sri Sumanthala having a few legal disputes, trying to get three of their players actually allowed onto the pitch. We'll talk about that later on the show as well. But St. Thomas is scoring 9 tries, converting 6 of them, but unfortunately for them, what they're going to look most about, and if I was Anurang Walpola and the coaching team, I'm not going to be so concerned, Abdullah, about the 57 points. I'm going to be more concerned about the 18 that they let in.
Yeah, absolutely, and they just dominated that game except for about 7 minutes before halftime and just about 5 minutes after halftime. That was pretty much a time when they conceded all their 18 points. So if you have to be very critical and really harsh in your analysis, probably, as you very correctly said, that's what the Thomian coaching staff will look at. Because they generally say the most important times to score in rugby is at the start of the game, just before halftime and just after halftime. St. Thomas has got off to a flying start, but unfortunately they let their game down at that crucial moment just before and just after halftime. So they probably would have got away with it against Sri Sumanthala. But in the tougher matches, they just cannot afford to let that happen.
You at the game, Abdullah. What did you make of this performance? You've seen a few of the Thomian performances so far. How did you rate this one?
Very good. I think just that win against DS last week has just risen their confidence. They looked very confident in the way they went about their task. The forwards were much more aggressive, understandably, against a rather weak opposition. But nonetheless, they seem to have a little bit more confidence in the way they went about their task. And most importantly, this win will also set them up well for the next couple of games, which if they win and win well, they do have a chance of making to that super round.
Yes, that is a big carrot for the Thomian team. Let's see how they go. But before that, we have Vidyartha who took on Thurston. Another massive win for them, 52 points to 20. And it was a real tri-fest. Vidyartha running absolute riot. And it's nice to see these boys, the way they run as well. Thurston managing just the 2 tries, but Vidyartha managing 8 of those. And you have to think that Thurston is a probably more formidable opposition than Sri Sumangala is at the moment. So Vidyartha will take a lot of heart from this, Abdellah, but unfortunately for them, caught on the tough side of the draw.
Yeah, that's right. And I think they're pretty pleased with the result and probably the way they played as well, because they suffered an unexpected loss in Maradana last week. So they've done extremely well to bounce back from that from that defeat and register a rather comprehensive victory.
Yeah, it was a good one for them. But then Trinity took on St. Anthony's in an all-candy clash up there as well. These are the 2 teams that battle in their cricket big match. This is not as big a match historically for them, but a very important one nevertheless for Trinity, who are looking very definitely at trying to get that second spot behind Isipatana in Group 1A. 32 points to 19 is how this one finished. And St. Anthony's, even though they have been scoring points, just haven't been able to win matches. And a 5-try bonus point performance for Trinity.
Yeah, it was absolutely critical for Trinity to get a result and get that bonus point as well. So with this win, they pretty much, to a certain extent, have their destiny in their own hands. So it's just up to them to try and get another good 2 convincing bonus point victories, and that should be enough for them to make it to that super round. So the good thing about that result is the fate is pretty much in Trinity's hands as yet.
Yes, and we're looking forward to what Trinity will have to do. Just beat their next opposition, because they've already played DS, they've already played St. Thomas's, they've already played Isipatana. They've lost 2 of those games, won one of them handsomely. So it all depends on the results that they get next. And of course, that all-important match in this group between St. Thomas's and Isipatana, which is yet to come. Wesley taking on Kingswood in the historical Blase Trophy Shield, the LD Blase Trophy, which these 2 teams have played for a long time. Kingswood, as you know, the first team to play rugby here in Sri Lanka, and this trophy is in honor of one of the gentlemen who is part of their history. And Wesley being very dominant here, 7 tries to 2, 4 conversions as well. They didn't have to kick at goal either. Kingswood are still struggling, Abdellah, but Wesley showed glimpses of the side they could be.
Yeah, absolutely, and they definitely ran some of the top teams in this group close as well. So this result was pretty much expected. I don't think there's any surprise in the scoreline either. But good on Wesley. I think they put on a really comprehensive victory, and it's a traditional game on their part. So they'll be really pleased that they managed to come on with such a good win.
Yeah, and Kingswood really do lift themselves for this trophy game, but unfortunately for them, just couldn't get over the line. St. Peter's taking on Zahira. St. Peter's looking to get some confidence ahead of a big match next week, and they certainly got that, thrashing Zahira, who were kind of an also-ran. They managed to beat Vidyartha last week, and they've come close to a few other teams. And you would have expected not this kind of a margin, Abdellah, from Zahira, especially at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And but till about the 15th to 20th minute, if I'm not mistaken, the game was pretty close. So you could probably have understood that Zahira were expected to make a lot of tackles. And I think during that second half, probably fatigue set in. And of course, St. Peter's, the class team, that they just ran away with it.
Yes, it's these St. Peter's College runners, the backs. They've got some great runners outside in the 13 channel, 14, 15, and number 11 as well. These are the guys that are going to we're going to talk about in our analysis of the upcoming game between Royal and St. Peter's as well. It's a real contrast of styles between the outside backs of St. Peter's and the big forwards of Royal. But this was a game that I was really surprised by. St. Joseph's taking on Royal, and you expected St. Joseph's to capitulate. They haven't had a great season so far, but they ran them really close, and it was 4 tries to 3 in the final analysis, Abdellah, and Royal just pulling away in the last 20 minutes of the game, as they usually do. But this one, at halftime, you could see the Royal crowd on the edge of their seats.
Yeah, definitely, and they were trailing 12 points to 7 as well. And the second half just did not get in off to the best of starts, isn't it? Royal's vice captain Veera Surya was shown the red card as well, so they had to play an entire second half with 14 players. So I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted it to be so taxing with such a big game coming up. But from Royal's point of view, it probably would have also given them a bit of confidence that they could win with 14 players, because they were under a lot of pressure. They were trailing at halftime, and when they lost Veera Surya, they were down 12 points to 7 as well. So from that perspective, I think they would be pleased with the result, but not so much the performance.
Yes, I think it was very clear that with Buonika Senanayaka and Ihan Virasuria, Royal are a much better side than without them, obviously, because they're such good players. We'll talk about that in a while as well. Isipatana taking on DS, the match of the season so far. Absolutely stunning game of rugby. DS started off straight out of the blocks, put some points on the board, and daylight between them and Isipatana on the scoreboard. But Isipatana, being who they are, they have always been in this position and managed to fight back. You can never write them off, and that's exactly what they did, Abdullah. In the last couple of movements of the game, a stunning moment of inspiration from their scrum half, passes into the back of the referee, gets the set piece, and they score off the next round.
Absolutely, and just that phase of play, what for me the really striking feature was how well the Isipatana backs straightened the line. They just straightened the line brilliantly and just created space for their wing three-quarter to go and create a phase, the final phase close to the try line, which they allowed the young Zumri to go over for the match-winning try. So, I mean, it was a fantastic performance. Also, a lot of credit to DS and Naik. I thought they came out all guns blazing, went into that lead. A bit of an opportunistic try with that interception, but they carried that on, managed to go up to a 14 points to nil lead. But Isipatana, you can just never let your guard down against them, isn't it? They've got so many threats in the forwards as well as in the backs. And eventually, I guess just that big match temperament eventually held them in good stead and enabled them to pull this game off.
Where do you think it has gone wrong for DS though, Abdullah? Because they were much fancied before we started the season. They got a good forward pack and they've been in the lead against some teams that they've lost against. So where do you think against St. Thomas's and Isipatana that they went wrong?
I think it's probably the fact that the big game management, basically in big situations, under pressure, how to manage situations. DS have now just been playing A-Division rugby probably for about 3 to 4 years consistently. So they are relatively new when compared to all the other established schools, like you take the Royals, you take the St. Thomas's, Isipatana, St. Peter's, and so on. So they are still pretty much learning, and but the main thing is they are competing. And it may be a bit tough for them to make it to that second round, but they're yet not out of it. So let's see how it goes. I mean, but overall, as you very correctly said, game of the season, and full credit to both teams for putting on such a good show.
Yeah, it was. And I think the way I see Isipatana playing, I like to see Shahid Zumri attacking more from the second and third phase, Abdullah, because he's very close to the action, very close to the forwards when he takes it at number 10. And I'd just like to see him get a little bit of space. We saw so much from him when he was playing at number 13. But now that he's so much closer to the forwards and the third rowers at number 10, I'd like to see him just looping around and not taking the first pass, but maybe taking the second pass and the third pass, which is what he did for that final try that Isipatana scored. So something for Saleh Kumar to think about.
Yeah, that's right. But also I think the fact that he's probably their most senior player, they need him in that crucial number 10 position as well. But as you very correctly said, it probably stifles him of the bit of room that he would enjoy. But maybe off face play, maybe he can come in, as you said, through from the second or third receiver, like what happened in that final phase of the play. So, yes, very correctly. Something for Isipatana rather to think about, and I'm sure they will work on it going forward.
So 27 points to 24. Isipatana remaining unbeaten, one of only 3 unbeaten teams. We'll have only 2 unbeaten teams at the end of next week. We'll talk about that big match coming up in just a moment.
Fiat Car Radials. The road is yours.
As always with Ruck N Roll, we have the people that matter online with us, and we're speaking to none other than the defending champion coach, a man who's going to be under more pressure than he has been all season when it comes to next Saturday. And we're talking of none other than Mr. Sanath Martis, coach of the defending champion St. Peter's, and he has joined us live on Ruck N Roll. Good evening, Sanath.
Good evening, Shanaka.
How was today's training?
Good. Because we were training, we were just practicing our strengths and weaknesses, and I am just assuming how the Royal is going to play and how they are going to defend our backline and all that. Therefore, I'll have to make some counter plan for those things.
Okay.
That is how the training goes.
Okay. And Sanath, it's been a good season so far for you. You lost Emit Jayavira, unfortunately, to a knee injury early on, but it doesn't look like the backline has suffered because of that. Your backline has played really well so far.
Yes, because backline is so much, we have so many experienced players, and also they are very skillful and also experienced. That I think that is the main reason. And Banuko Nanakar is doing a very good job with backs. That will be the reason that they are playing well.
And when we look at this Royal side, Sanath, it's no secret that their forwards are the main weapon. Your forwards have been good, but maybe not as good as them. How do you plan to counter that Royal driving more, their line out, and their ruck speed?
Yeah, we were well aware. They were good in their line out drive and pick and goes. And their game is mainly based on line out drive and the pick and go. And in pick and go, they are going with another forward, the latch, the next player who is going for the latch. And we know I have trained my players how to counter that. And we have got down some of our heavy forwards for practices. And practice is going well, and I hope that we can counter that. We have, according to what we have practiced.
You know this Royal team well, Sanath. You coached them for quite a few years. You know the culture of rugby inside Royal. But how do you see the pressure building? Is it more pressure on you as the defending champions, or is it more pressure for them as the home team?
I think it's more pressure for them, right? Because I know how to handle the situation, and my coaching staff is also well aware, and boys also well aware that because we have gone through all their matches, and we know that their half combination is not that good, and they will go for rush defense for our backline. That's all that we know, and main thing that they will keep the ball with the forward as much as they can, and the fullback, I don't know what's the boy's name, and he's a left footer, and is a very good scan of the game. And we have identified, and my boys has already identified them, and we know that they are also working on our strengths, and it will be a good match on Saturday.
And we know now that unfortunately Jehan Veerasurya will probably not be available for Royal because of the red card he picked up last week. Does that change your plans? Does that change your selection at all, Sanath?
No, not at all, because I am not worried about the opponent's players or other things, because we need to counter what we have seen, and they have played about 6 matches up to now, and that is there because those information is there when we are going through their matches, and likewise I think they are also going through our matches, and we are not worried about the single players who are their playmakers and all that. We are not worried.
Last year, Sanath, this game was the first match of the season. Perhaps not the ideal place for both these teams to play. But now we are about 5 or 6 games in, and both teams have peaked. So, how do you see the game going? Because last year was a very low scoring, it was very high error rate game. Do you think that's going to change this time around?
Yes, 100% true, Shanaka, because these under 19 players are playing, and they want some match because previous year we have lost so many games, and the team was really down, and it took us. It's very difficult to build up the game plan, and also I think our last year's Sudesh Jayavikrama has changed the game a lot, and we had some good playmakers last year, and this year I think in the school arena, always Royal, St. Peter's, Isipatana, Trinity, Some of those schools were playing good rugby, and when it comes to the end of the season, these 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 schools were coming to these players were coming to the top, and I think it will be a very enjoyable match, and hope that it will be a high scoring match.
Yes, from the spectators' point of view, of course, we hope it's going to be a high-scoring game. Thanks very much, Mr. Sanath Martis, for joining us. Good luck on Saturday. We'll see you there.
Thank you very much, Shanaka. Good night.
That was Coach Sanath Martis of the defending champion St. Peter's College. They're going confidently into the Royal College Sports Complex, which is kind of like a fortress for Royal College. They don't lose there easily, and of course, they haven't lost to this opposition there since 2010. So that's something that they will take with them into this game as well. They will not want to be beaten at home, and that's something that will really spur this Royal College team on. We'll talk more about that game from a neutral's perspective as well, and look forward to the next week's action later on the show. Looking ahead, of course, to next week's games, we have some key fixtures, a couple of them decisive, both in Group 1A and Group 2A, and they're going to go a long way towards deciding how this league is going to turn out as well. So here are some of the fixtures. Zahira taking on Thurston. Expect Zahira to win that one comfortably. St. Thomas is taking on Dhammaraj, and that might be a little closer than expected, but St. Thomas's are at home, so that should see them over the line. Wesley taking on Vidyarthi. That's going to be an entertaining game, Abdellah. I really am looking forward to seeing that one, but the game from this set of fixtures is going to be Trinity versus Science, because both of them know that a loss will really impact their chances of making it to the second place in that, Trinity knows that losing will not allow them to go through to that second place.
Yeah, that's right. And from Trinity's point of view, it's just not just getting the result, is the chance. They'll be looking at that bonus point as well. Maybe at the start they probably won't be looking too far, because this season Trinity generally hasn't travelled well down to Colombo. So it's not going to be an easy game against a Science team that probably has nothing to lose and will be looking for that one big scalp to end their season well. So Trinity will have a tough time, but I'd expect them to win. The only thing to see is whether they'll be able to get that all-important bonus point in the process of that, in the process of getting the victory.
So Science were a team that started well, 19 points to 9 against Isipatana. They didn't manage to score tries, but they did hold that strong Isipatana team. But they and DS have been teams that have kind of fallen off as the season progressed, whereas some of the other teams have gotten better and better. And Trinity is one of those teams who seem to have gotten better as time went on. They, of course, have one eye, as always, Abdellah, on the Bradby at the end of the season. But they will know that this is a real opportunity for them to get into the second round.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're very much in the hunt, but it's very tight, isn't it? St. Thomas's will be breathing down their neck, as well as DSN and ICA. So they just cannot afford a slip-up in this fixture against Science.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really important game. Look out for that one, and Wesley versus Vidyarthi. And then, of course, we're looking forward to the biggest match of the season coming up so far in the next round of fixtures. But before that, we have St. Joseph's taking on Kingswood. Should be an interesting game, but look for St. Joseph's to win that one comfortably. Isipatana taking on St. Anthony's, and the way St. Anthony's season has gone, you have to feel for them. They don't really have the depth, but Isipatana, after that really testing and gut-wrenching win that they managed to get, it would have taken a lot out of them emotionally, Abdellah, but they still should be able to overcome. DSN and I are taking on Sri Sumangala, and they will be looking for a big win there. Not just the bonus points, but lots of tries, lots of points for as well. But the game we are talking about, Abdellah, St. Peter's taking on Royal at your home grounds, Royal Complex. And I said neutral, but Abdellah is a former Royal captain, so he might have one gold eye and one blue eye as he looks at this game. But the fact remains that it is probably going to be the title decider.
Well, could very well be, but I'm sure Isipatana will have other things to say about that as well. But nonetheless, it's probably the match of the season thus far. As soon as the fixtures came out, everyone was looking at this game, at least in terms of the first round. Because as we know, points are going to get carried forward to that super round. So I don't think either team, if they have title ambitions, can afford to drop this game.
No, of course not. And we're talking about Royal's Twin Towers, an integral part of that big forward pack that Royal have. We spoke to Sanath Martis a little bit earlier, the St. Peter's College coach, and he said that he knows what Royal are going to do, that they're going to come hard at them in the tight phases, and they know that their rucking is really of high quality, and they know what to do to counter that. But what I did ask him also is whether the absence of Jehan Weerasuriya is almost certainly going to be out because of the red card he picked up. Whether that's going to affect him. He said, of course, no, and that's what any coach will say. We're not looking at individual players. But with Bhuvaneka Senanayake coming out of injury, Abdellah, not having played last week, and Jehan not playing this week, how does that impact your Royal team?
Well, at least getting Bhuvaneka back into the team will definitely help, especially in terms of the lineouts, and also he's a very important player in terms of a ball carrier. He generally always gets the team over the game line and gets three-quarters that front foot ball, which is so important. Weerasuriya's absence, if the appeal process doesn't go through, it will be a loss. There's no doubt about it, because it brings also a sense of leadership into that forwards pack, so that will be missed as well. So it's something which Royal will have to adjust. But I thought just in that second half against St. Joseph's, without both of them, while trailing, I thought they showed a lot of resolve to turn around that game and win it with 14 players without two of their main talisman in the pack. So that will give them a little bit of confidence, but they will need to up the ante another notch or two if they're going to throw out this very strong Peter Wright outfit.
Well, we saw what red cards can do. Often red cards can have an immediate downer effect, but then sometimes people can lift. We saw the All Blacks do it in the World Cup final. Can Royal do it in the next match that they're going to face? And they did it, as Abdellah said, in the second half against St. Joseph's. They really managed to lift. But now it's a whole week, Abdellah, a training week that they have to lift in and take that with them into the Saturday game as well. How much emotionally is that going to affect this team?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. It's a rather experienced team, so they have been in these kind of situations over the last two seasons as well. I don't think that'll play too much into the psyche, because they're used to lifting themselves after long seasons, especially since they have played in big games like the Rugby as well. But they're up against a very quality Peter Wright outfit who will be playing with a lot of confidence. And you have to say they have been the form team of the competition thus far. So I think Royal will need to play their best game, bring their A game, if they're going to get a victory in this match.
From a tactical point of view, Abdellah, it's probably going to be St. Peter's backs. They've got some outstanding, skillful, hard-running backs in that back line. And of course, Royal, their strength traditionally has been in their forwards. They haven't showed a lot of expansive rugby this time, although you do have some good defenders in Ditula Jayasuriya, who comes off the bench and makes some good tackles. Steven has slotted nicely into that number 13 channel as well, and Nabil Yahya has been pretty good at the back, even though he hasn't been tested defensively. So how do you see Royal approaching this game? Will they just starve St. Peter's of the ball?
Yes, I'm sure they'll be looking to control possession. That is going to be important. But I don't think they can look at it just as that alone, because the Peter Wright pack is pretty competent as well. So they will get their fair share of possession. The key for Royal is that they've just got to ensure that their set piece functions well. The line-out was not that good against St. Joseph's in the last game, and it hasn't been as consistent as they would like it to be. So it'll be interesting to see, if Jehan is not available, how they will adjust, because Bhuvaneka will be probably the sole jumper. So there could be some variations that they could try in the line-out. But overall, I think they've got to ensure that they keep the scoreboard ticking. They have the advantage that they're playing at home. Royal has just played that one game against Kingswood at the start of the season, so they have been on the road for the rest of their games. So I'm sure they will relish the opportunity of getting back, playing at their home ground. St. Peter's, from their part, I think they will just continue to play the way they have been playing. They generally combine well. Their forwards and three-quarters generally combine well. They will probably try to play with a bit more width, just to try and get the Royal forwards to move a bit up and down. So it'll be interesting to see, because it's going to be a clash of styles as well. And overall, I think it's just set up for a brilliant game of rugby.
Yes, this is what we like to see. Teams that bring different things to the party, taking on each other. Both these teams unbeaten. And like I said, 3 teams unbeaten at the start of this weekend. There'll be only 2, perhaps, or maybe even 1. At the end of it, we never know if St. Anthony's can pull a rabbit out of their hat. But let's wait and see how that one goes. Thanks very much to Abdellah for joining us to look for back and forward on Ruck N Roll. So after last week's action, let's look at where everybody stands at the moment. Group 1A, we have Isipatana at the top. They're still the only team that are unbeaten in that entire group so far. We have them having played 5 and won 5. St. Thomas's suddenly find themselves at number 2, something we would never have thought when they lost to Trinity in the first week of the season, but they have grown better and better and better as the season has gone on. They have got 4 wins out of 5, but of course they are yet to play Isipatana. The other 2 teams that are looking at coming into that number 2 position are both DS and Trinity, who find themselves at 3 and 4. Both these teams have played all the other big teams. They've played each other, they've played St. Thomas's as well, and that means that St. Thomas's playing Isipatana is one of the games that's going to really decide the fate of both DS and Trinity, who are at 3 and 4 at the moment. Dharmaraja could go a long distance in affecting that turnout, because they could take on St. Thomas's and maybe deprive them of a bonus point, make sure it's a low-scoring affair, maybe even beat them at the big club grounds, and then that's something that's going to set the cat among the pigeons. Both DS and Trinity are going to be eyeing that number 2 spot. Science College, of course, as we talked about, taking on Trinity College this season, they could do the exact same thing that Dharmaraja could do to Trinity as well. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Science have been a good team. They've had trouble off the field, but they've won a game and lost a game since that unfortunate incident. But now, let's see what they can do against this quality Trinity outfit that have everything to play for. St. Anthony's and Sri Sumangala unfortunately not able to pick up a win in any of their games so far, and when they play each other, of course, they'll be looking for that first win of the season, and that's going to be a bottom of the table clash that both of those teams are going to be relishing. Let's look now at Group 2A. We've got that massive game that we talked about. 2 of the unbeaten teams in the league so far, St. Peter's and Royal, playing each other, and at the end of that equation, there's going to only be 1 unbeaten team, unless, of course, we have a draw at Royal College Sports Complex. Let's see how that one turns out. Vidyartha taking on Vidyartha will be in number 3 position. As we said, they'll probably be in either number 1 or number 2 on the other side of the draw, but they find themselves in number 3 here. Wesley and St. Joseph's have won 3 and 2 games respectively. Zahira have won 1 game, Kingswood have won 1 game, and Thurston unfortunately yet not off the mark. So St. Peter's taking on Royal. That's going to be the big match of the tournament so far. And then we have Wesley taking on Vidyartha. Those are going to decide the top 4 places probably in that group. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Ruck N Roll. Thanks very much for joining us. We hope to see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe to podhub.lk on Facebook, like us, share us, and of course on YouTube. Press that subscribe button. We'll see you next week.